Tell him I got the juice.
I think the power of communication
Mm.
is at the epicenter of all healing from
Yeah.
all trauma. I was talking with a friend of mine today. We were talking about moral failures,
Mhm.
and just based on the work that we've done in process group therapy, my conclusion has become that um, I feel like I have empirical data
Mhm.
on the epicenter of all moral failures. And he was like, "Do tell, right? It's a pretty lofty statement to make
Yeah.
that you've zeroed in on. You've been able to locate the epicenter of all moral failures." I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, tell me what it is." I said, "The inability to express what they're feeling, they want to do.
They have no voice.
They don't have a voice.
Somehow in the process of trauma,
Yeah,
people lose their voice.
they lose their voice.
Yes.
So if you don't get to say it,
No.
you've exponentially increased the chances that you're going to do it."
Yeah.
Here's a scripture actually that comes to mind when I listen to this, and I'm going to say it implies it. I think it implies the process of temptation. So I actually want to take your attention to 2 Samuel chapter 11. And again, I want to say this because I think in some way, shape, or form it implies it. And most of you, if you guys have read this passage of scripture before, it definitely takes us to David and Bathsheba. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, "I am pregnant." So David sent this word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite, and Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. And David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." So Uriah left the palace. And a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. David was told Uriah did not come home, so he asked Uriah, haven't you just come from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents. My commander Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How can I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? Surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." And so then later on, we read also where David sends Uriah actually to the front line. And again, he's the husband of the woman he slept with, being Bathsheba. Look at verse 14. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab, send it to you with Uriah. In it, he wrote, "Put Uriah out in the front where the fighting is fiercest, then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at a place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men in the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Okay. And so all of this, okay, what does all this have to do with anything Tim Ross is talking about regarding just being honest and open about what you're feeling? So, of course, there's so many things that we can look at and pick this text apart. You know, David being a king, he's at home, he's not on the battlefield with his army. That's strike number one. Strike number two, he not only sees this woman who is Bathsheba, who's bathing, and in context and cultural, she was doing a ritual. She was doing a ritual cleansing, okay, every month or after every period cycle that a woman went through, she had to go through a ritual cleaning. And this is exactly what it was. So it wasn't like a peeping Tom deal. It wasn't like, people were just bathing out in the open for the attention of other people, or even in any kind of context we would put it into an American viewpoint. Rather, this very woman was doing her ritual cleansing. David is on top of the roof. Again, there were very flat roofs that were created in this time as well. So obviously different structures compared to how we would think of it in today's context. And he goes from like just a glance to then like it's a double take. Okay. So this is how we know that he was looking a little too long. Okay, look at verse 2. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. Okay, so David just looks at her long enough to acknowledge every curve, every this, every that of the beauty of Bathsheba, and then he goes and sends somebody out to find her. Okay. And then the man came back. She's Bathsheba. Then he then again went back. David sent messengers to get her. Okay. Right. And it's kind of interesting because temptation has a way of elevating pretty quickly, going from a glance, going from, something you just kind of see going across your mind to then it's like a double take. You look back at it, and then you start to fantasize with it. You start to sit with it. You start to fester up the feelings. You start to consider, well, how can I get away with this? Right. How can I do this? How can I do that? How can I rid of it? How can I hide the evidence? How can this be something that doesn't come back and bite me in the end? And then you continuously just come up with all these plots and plans to kind of deal with this potential sin that you're going to dive into, and then before you know it, you're in it to win it, and then it's up and over, right? And a lot of that is due to passion. A lot of that is due to a lot of like emotional thoughts and feelings and all these kind of things that just bubble up in you, and before you know it, you start taking off and doing things. And trust me when I tell you, like, we've all experienced this in some way, and it may not even be from a place of sexual temptation as David is experiencing in this moment. Maybe it's food, right? Gluttony, right? It could be anger. Like, you got angry, you started seeing stuff just play out in your head, and then before you knew it, you was fighting. Before you knew it, you was yelling. Before you knew it, you was confronting. Like so many different things, right? So many different things that we could apply these steps and levels of temptation where we eventually get into this cycle where after doing it the first time, it's something that happens repetitively over smaller things, smaller triggers, and then it grows into something massive. The cycle of temptation literally is presented to us in the formality of lust through what David experiences. David is somewhere he's not supposed to be as a king. He then gets himself involved in just staring at this woman who is participating in a ritual cleansing that she has to do, a part of the community, in order to show that she has done her due diligence with what she was separated from the community from, regarding the period cycle and all those kinds of things that women had to go through to be a part, to obey the law and to obey the commandments. Definitely take a look at Leviticus for context of that, because that also gives us good, interesting context to what that law really is all about in and through. But he's a place where he's not supposed to be. He's staring and getting a really good look at Bathsheba in this vulnerable position. And then he just starts making it up in his mind. This is what I'm going to go after, and this is what I'm going to do. And I really think, and I think could be safe to imply in this space with David, he gave into this temptation and he didn't have to. But what really allowed him to give into it was because he didn't let anybody know of importance, that was his intention. That's what he wanted, right? Even something as small as that. Think about how many times people fall into sexual temptation and promiscuity, all because, man, it's just what you wanted in the moment, and your body was horny, it was hot, it was crazy. You didn't really tell anybody. You was just like, shoot, I'm gonna just go with it, right? You didn't hit nobody up, an accountability partner, accountability group. Hey, this is how I'm feeling right now. I caught this girl, this one person, bad, looking good, and boom, and you just kind of went with it, and you didn't really go to actually admit that your intentions were something completely different. Your intentions probably weren't of the best. And I just wonder that if we did do that, right? If we did take that extra step to admit our intentions behind certain actions and activities that we were going to get into, that we envisioned ourselves partaking in, would we then keep ourselves from a lot of the moral failures, as Tim Ross alluded to? And I'm not too sure if this is a text that he even refers to even get that point across behind, moral failures being pointed to people not being able to admit what they feel and express how they feel and express the emotions and the intentions and thoughts behind what they're going to do. But I do think that in a lot of ways, confession does have a way of allowing us to actually progress forward, move forward, and make better decisions. And I definitely think that if David were to have admitted here in this space, just hypothetically speaking, if David were to have admitted in this space that, yo, Bathsheba looks good on this roof, and I actually have some thoughts of wanting to have sex with her, like if he would have actually admitted that to somebody, is it possible that we would have even gotten this context from David? I don't know. It's possible that it doesn't. How do we know that he doesn't admit to this true thing, right? Well, we read that he says, then David sent messengers to get her, right? So in this text, we don't really know if he ever really shares his intentions. So we know David knows his intentions, but does the people that he's sending these messengers, the messengers, right? Do they know his intentions? I don't know. We don't get that in the text. We just know that he has intentions to do some things with her. And so he goes and gets her. She came to him and he slept with her. And so it's so interesting how our minds, how temptation can play such a huge role. Our passions and emotions drive us to do and make certain decisions, compromise and step out of character simply because it's in the moment, it's in the heat of the moment, it's real hot. And there's a lot of things that we'll compromise on doing. And so I think what Tim Ross essentially is getting at, and what I'm looking to get at in using that text, is that it's very possible, right, for us to make decisions and compromises and commit moral failures in our lives simply because we did not want to admit to somebody we trusted around us that this is how we're feeling in the moment. And I'm curious to know, maybe you can reflect on some decisions you've made, and maybe you can even reflect and just walk with me in this text for a second. Does David even go with Bathsheba in this space? Does David even go after Bathsheba in this space and take Bathsheba? And then furthermore, go and put Uriah on the front line to purposely, intentionally have him killed so he didn't have to commit or come out about his actions towards his wife? Does David go on this rabbit hole of committing moral failure after moral failure if he would have just admitted in the beginning, yo, that I don't know who that is on that rooftop, but that girl is bad. She knows she bad, and I'm thinking about having sex with her. And I wonder if he would have shared that with somebody that he trusted. Would that have even happened? Now, of course, that's playing hypotheticals. I don't want to necessarily play a role or emotioning where we're reading things into the text. But the biggest thing that I just want you to get out of that is that when you get to admitting and confessing some feelings and some emotions, some intentions that you're having on what you're looking to do and why you're looking to do it, and getting around people who you can do that, who are trusted, who you can trust, be open, honest, transparent, be vulnerable with. When you can get into a space where you can admit that that's how you feel, that will do so much saving for you, saving you from trouble, saving you from harm, saving you from committing actions that are reprehensible, that are hard to overcome, and only put you in a hole, and only cause you to go into more cycles of putting yourself in a hole because you try to commit other actions to cover up the initial action you did that you now recognize is wrong. And even in the moment, if you stepped out, if you just stepped inside your logic and reasoning, you'd be like, man, this don't even make no sense. But insert lust, insert horniness, insert all these emotions that rile up, and all of a sudden we become blinded. But this is why accountability, this is why community, this is why getting around people who you can trust and you can open up to and you can communicate and talk these things through, that's what makes the difference, because none of us are above moral failures and compromises. But what separates those who made major moral failure after moral failure and those who choose not to, those who don't, those who aren't caught up in those spaces, it isn't because they're better. It isn't because they're a higher Christian or holier than thou. No, it's because they made a decision that others didn't. And the decision was to get around accountability and community and people who they can trust and depend on when they experience those moments, when they experience those emotions, when they have those thoughts, and they can come to them in such an intimate space and admit that that's how they're feeling. And that person is able to walk them through it. And I think that changes the game. So find somebody that you can talk to, find somebody that you can do life with, find community, find people that you can depend on, that you can grow with, and really confess those intentions, feelings, and emotions in, to keep you from doing the worst thing, to keep us from making convenient yet very awful, immoral decisions that harm others. Shout out Tim Ross there. That's a beautiful thought. I would agree. I'm sure there's so many other texts that we could use besides that. That was one that came to mind. And I think there's room enough at the table to talk that through. Thank you so much for joining me in this clip. This is from a recent live stream that I have just done. If you want to check that out, click somewhere on the screen, and there you can catch the full replay along with so much more content we've got here for you, learning how to navigate and grow healthy, happy, whole, and biblical relationships. I'll see you over there.